I will now present you my presentation about the UNECE standards for meat in Odoo and how you can get your goods ready for international trade. Here I prepared the agenda for this talk. First we will start with the introduction, then we will go about the UNECE standard, what it is about, and then we will go into details how we implemented it into Odoo and how the information that is generated with the standard can be exchanged with different partners in the supply chain. And we will end with some slides about how you can get your articles ready for international trade. So first of all, agriculture production is different because you have uncertainties. Uncertainties like the weather, pests, and so on influence the product properties, and thus they can vary. This makes it different to other sectors, for example the car industry, where you have specified products and you know already what to expect, especially in the beginning. And on the other hand, the standards make it easier to do international trade. So this might sound like a conflict. So in my presentation I want to show you how this can be done in Odoo. And not only that, but also how you can be flexible and do the trade even when not all product properties are defined in the beginning. Thus, I will also present you the concept of the dummy article. The project was done by the BrainTech company, or is still under progress, but the part that I'm showing you now is nearly finished. And this is done for one of the biggest meat importer in Switzerland. But I will show you the standard and also the concept how to implement it in Odoo, but we will go also one level above and go to the general, to an abstract level, so you can see how you can implement the standard that are specific for your industry. I know that is already, this is early in the morning, but as you can see here, this is a fillet, and on the right hand side of that you can see actually a string. And this is what the UNECE code is about. UNECE stands for United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and there is a working party on agriculture quality standard that help facilitate international trade, encourage high quality production, improve profitability, and there are standards not only for meat that I will go into details here, but also for fresh fruits, dry fruit, egg and egg products, as well as even seed potatoes and cut flowers. As you can see here, this is a UNECE code here, and it's based on a 20-digit long code, and it's a bit simplified because, as you can see here, and there are lots of zeros in it, which means that they are not specified. So the fillet is actually presented by this sequence, and I will now tell you how to read the code. So the first two digits, data field 1, is the species. Then the second data field, that is 4 digits long, is the product, or in this case the cut. And for this species the data field 3 is not used, but for example in the species chicken, so when chicken products would be defined, the data field 3 would be used to tell the company or the supplier that this product contains bones. And here data field 4 is refrigeration, and in this case refrigeration is also defined. That means that the product is stored between minus 1.5 and not more than 7 degrees at all time. And so it continues all the fields. I won't go into detail, but just to give you an overview or an introduction how the UNECE standard is built up. I prepared a little quiz. You can fill it out under the link that you see here. So I would like to, if you take part, you can now, that you now know what is the code about, you can go in there and choose from one of the answers what is the right one. And you can even win something. So if you have time, just follow the link here. It will be also placed at the bottom of the slide in the next 2 or 3 slides, so you can still go for it. And you don't need to remember the whole UNECE string. You can see it on the website as well. So how did we implement this standard in Odoo? We worked on Odoo Enterprise version 12, and the requirement was that in the system you could work on trade with meat products as well as with non-meat products. And as you have seen, there are a lot of attributes or properties, and that was the case to then divide the fields that are shown on the product. So as you might know, Odoo is having product categories. So we built up the constraint that when the product category is of type meat, you can see all these UNECE relevant fields here. But don't worry about all the fields for your company. You don't need to maintain and do the first initial upload. It can be done with an Excel sheet. So what our customer did is he configured all the products in an Excel sheet, and then we actually did the upload for him, so he could start with the system that has several thousand products. And as you can see here on the right hand side, there are some fields that are not directly in the UNECE standard. So in this case, we extended the UNECE. We extended the UNECE standard with some specific fields for the company, because the Swiss market requires special properties that were not covered in the standard. So you can see Odoo is able to cover a standard, but as well you can extend it a bit. And here, as you might see, there is also the barcode that is in the Odoo core, and you can see that it's created based on the product properties. So in this case, it's 7002 in the front and followed by the UNECE code. I will go into detail with the barcode and how to exchange data with the supply chain in later slides. As you can see here, there's also some human readable code. So this is the internal reference. In this case, it's bovine, and then tenderloin, also filet called, or known as filet, and then side strap off, chilled. And this is an easy product. As I said, we did not fill out all the other fields like animal category. So as you might know, there are different ones, or production system, feeding system. So you can specify this is organic produced meat, or if it was slaughtered in a halal way. So all this is covered by the UNECE standard for meat. But what are the benefits of having all these fields? One might say that you could just take the text, the digits, and put them all in one field. And there are several advantages to do it in the way that we did it, because with that, the employees have a tool to actually manage their products directly in the system, and it's from a human readable directly in the GUI. And also the power of Odoo would get lost if you just take the number. and not having the different fields. In that way, the employees can easily search and filter and group for special attributes or for the specified attributes, and thus the power of the Odoo core is still maintained. And clear specification based on an international standard leave less room for uncertainty and improve the communication efficiency, because you're talking about the same thing. You exactly know how is the product specified. So one could also say, but this does not leave room to the way how we work in our business, and therefore we developed the concept of a dummy article. Our dummy article is like a placeholder, and in this placeholder can be seen that there are some product attributes that are specified. For example, you have to, in our case, in this example, for a fillet, you need to tell at least what is the cut, so what is the product that you want, and how should it be refrigerated. Because those things are clear for the customer that we did it. So, but under other things, for example, as shown here, like the brand or the country, or even the weight range, are not yet specified, because agricultural products can vary on the season, and therefore, for example, a meat can be ordered, a fillet can be ordered, but they don't know the weight range yet, because the meat is, in this case it would be the animals that are still alive, and that depends on the season, on the weather, how much grass is there, and thus this influences also the supply. And for example, the weight range the person who does the request for quotation here can specify the weight range that he would like, but that is just like a proposal. So when the request for quotation is sent out, the vendor will then answer and give clear specification what are the properties of the product. And in Odoo, we implemented it in a way that you can create a request for quotation, that you can send it to the vendor, but you cannot make actually a purchase order out of it. So to actually make a purchase order, you need to transform the dummy article into a real article. And this is done here. And as you might see, this is a bit crowded here, so the new feature of Odoo 13 is very welcome, that you can actually select the visibility of some fields. The fields are they are needed, but not in every case. So the Odoo 13 implementation with all these 3 dots would be really nice. So let's see, maybe we can do a downgrade of that. But in this case, we go from a tenderloin chilled, a dummy article, to a fully specified article. And as you can see here, we have 2 columns for that. The dummy article was selected in the first step, and then later on the fully specified article. So the history is also taken, that you see what was in the beginning demanded, and which dummy article, and which actual product was then bought in the purchase order. But how to exchange these data along the supply chain? The UNECE, Working Party for Agriculture, works together with the GS1 standard. And as you might know, there is the GS1 128, and this is the barcode based on GS1 128. The prefix here displays that it's like an indicator that this is a UNECE article, because the GS1 standard contains a lot of more of informations, and therefore the people in the supply chain, the companies in the supply chain, can see that this is a UNECE code, and there he know what the product is. But not only by scanning the barcode, the information can be exchanged. The information can also be shown on the customer portal. So when they order something, they know exactly what product they can choose, and what the company that we did this project for produces or supplies. And in the next steps, we will also work on the exchange the data electronically with ADI between the supplier and the customer. That will be the next steps. So how was the strategy in the project? How did we approach it? We did some research for the standard, and we find out that the UNECE standard for meat fits this. And then it's really important to discuss this with the key users of your company to make sure that the standard covers all the attributes that are needed, and if they are not covering all of them, then you should make a list or to see what is covered and what needs to be extended. Then the third step is that you should get in touch with an Odoo partner, and you can get help from them. We can look for you if an app exists that already covers your standard. In this case, we found out that no standard yet existed, or no app existed for this standard, and then we started the development. So first look if there's something on the market, so you don't need to do the work double. And then last thing is a lot of testing about the standard with the key users to make sure that the standard is actually suitable in practice. So here's my take-home message for you. First of all, Odoo is able to handle standards very well, and once developed, the standard can be maintained by the company itself. That means that they don't need to contact a partner every time if the standard might change. And the articles give flexibility to trade, and a digital twin ease the traceability in case of a callback. Like I've shown it you with the GS1, that you exactly know where the product was. And that's it. I want to thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, you can now use the time to ask it. Thanks. Yeah.
For the company who was implementing it, so what actually did they tell you now? Is it easier to handle that standard, or do they work with the digits, or do they work with the Odoo fields?
They work with the Odoo fields, and that's also the thing that they use, for example, in a PO. You can either search for the numerical codes. If you're really deep in the standard, you can search for the numbers, but they mainly work directly with the fields. So you can search in the purchase order, for example, directly for the product attributes, and that's it.
So even not experienced people are working with all the terms, and they are always compliant with the standard.
Yes, and we have like a strict separation between the people who can work with the product, who can order them, and the one who can actually set them up. So the quality department is setting them up, they're managing this. This is a special user role that they have, and therefore we have like this divided power. I've seen one question.
Is this available on the App Store?
Not yet. Not yet.
Will it be?
Might see, but yeah, if you're interested, we can get in touch with that. Okay, great. Then I would like to thank you for your time, and wish you a great day.
Thank you.
Lucas. I'm from BrainTech in Switzerland, and today I want to talk with you about the ODBC connector. I want to share with you our latest updates and improvements, and this is how we go through my talk. We start with the situation, then I present a short use case, just a few facts and figures. Then I'd like to talk about the features and the new features of the connector, and in the end I'd like to show you how to set up and configure the connector so that it works easily and perfectly. Here we go. So where are we? We are in a complex and digital landscape, and in such a landscape when we want to introduce Odoo, it's probably the case that the company won't shut down the entire IT environment, so just replace one system or two systems, and for example an existing ERP system is going to be replaced by Odoo. And to easily connect Odoo with the surrounding systems, we created this connector. And of course it's much more efficient for you if you don't have to work on time-consuming imports by doing it in the standard way, so you can do it with the connector in an automated way. As said, such needs led us to develop an ODBC connector, meaning we can connect with every database which has such an interface, an open database. We presented the connector already 2 years ago. My colleague Dominic, who's sitting here in the front row, was presenting it, and meanwhile we did some updates and improvements, and this is why I'm here today. So let us go through the topic. This is a use case for which we use the connector. It's a company which uses Microsoft Dynamics Navision basically for their HR processes, and they introduced Odoo, so we had to connect both systems. And as you can see, there are about 100 tables being imported from Navision to Odoo, and some of them occur to be imported every 30 minutes, so also in a very high frequency. What are the features of the connector? First of all, you can connect to any kind of data source. One condition is that the driver is existing for this database, and the driver must be installed. Further, the next feature is that it's import and export, so it's bidirectional, and you can of course have multiple connections. So it's not just possible to connect one database, you can connect several databases. What are we doing? We are fetching or prefetching the tables and fields of the source database, and then we can define which tables and which fields within the tables are going to be imported. I will explain that later, how it works in detail. Then we can have a dynamic data conversion, meaning that, for example, if a field or a value in a field is written with a capital letter, but in Odoo it has to be written in a small letter, we can make this conversion right on the fly. We can also set default values, meaning if we need a value in the model in Odoo, but it doesn't exist in the source database, we can set a default value in the configuration of the connector. The connector respects parent-child relations. So if in one table in the source database you have all the information, but in Odoo it's in different objects, you can achieve to import the data correctly and to fill the correct objects, the values in the correct objects in Odoo. You have to start at the bottom, at the model, at the object in Odoo, which has no dependencies, and then you build up. You can do the processing either on a manual way, so like triggering the import, or you can also make it automatically by a job which is running. And as mentioned here below, you have unlimited jobs you can configure. Of course, there are some constraints in terms of time and basically in terms of time, and the performance of the system. But if everything is set up from an infrastructural point of view, you can have unlimited number of jobs running. These are the features which have been here already 2 years ago. Now, what's new? We have one major improvement. We made one major improvement. This is the first point here on the bullet. It's now possible, if you have in the source database, if you have unique key changes, they now trigger an update and not creating a new record in Odoo. This was something we had to improve, because when in the source system, in the source database, a unique key was changed. It worked for the source, okay, fine, but Odoo crashed. Not crashed, but Odoo created a new record. And now we can track these changes, and it's possible to just to update the according record in Odoo. Then we improved the error handling, meaning before you were only able to see errors on the log level. Now they are displayed in the GUI, so it's much easier and of course much more convenient. Overall, the user experience has improved, especially one element is the documentation, which is now integrated in the GUI. So we see it later on the screenshots that you always get the information what to do. You get an explanation what is going to happen when you enter some values in the field. And it was migrated to version 11. Before it was just version 10. It's not yet on 12 and not yet on 13, but if you're interested, we can talk about that later. The screenshot you see here, this is the error message tab. So all the errors which occur appear here. Now, setup and configuration. How do we set it up and configure the connector? First of all, you need to have a data source which has to be available by an IP address, so a HTTPS domain. And then, of course, you have to download and install the app. And once you have done this, you will get this icon in your Odoo start screen. Next is obvious. You have to create a user with the according access rights. The access rights which are called SQL Connector Admin. Then we start. Now we create the connection. So we create a new record. We give a name. We define, or we say which driver is being used, and we enter the database name, we enter the user, the password, all this stuff necessary to create the new connection. we have the possibility to test the connection before we are fetching all the tables from the source database into Odoo. It's also possible to set a filter in order to just fetch a selection of the tables and not import all the tables. And then you have the next step, is the definition of the import, also the definition of the models which are going to be imported and the fields. I will explain that later in detail. First of all, I'd like to show you how this first step, the first configuration, looks like. I'm sorry that it's a bit tiny, but you can see that here you have the name of the connection, of the record, the driver you're using, and then all the information to the database and the username, etc. This is done here. And here below you see all the tables which are fetched. For example, here we show 40 out of 498 tables. So, how do we define the import to Odoo? I have to say this is the tricky part, because here you need to have the knowledge of Odoo, and you have to have a bit of knowledge of the source database. So it's not that easy. So maybe you also have to have a colleague on the other side you can work with. First of all, you create also a new record for the import. You also set a name, and very important, you set the sequence. I told you before that when we have like a parent-child relation between the objects in Odoo, you have to, maybe you have also dependencies, which table from the source has to be imported first and before another. So the sequence is setting this priority. And you can also define an extra SQL, meaning a database, or you say you have a database which is not existing in Odoo, but you import it from there, the values. And as you can see here already marked and not in gray, you set the relationship of the table to the model. Now, how does it look like? This is the first part. The name, the sequence of the import, and then down here you have the different tabs. And the first tab is the model, meaning in this case you have the SQL table which is called inventory, which is imported to the Odoo model called test. We don't have used like live models here because we would have revealed some insights of our customers. You have to excuse that, sorry. But that's why it's just called test. Then you go on the second tab. Now you have to do the field mapping, meaning the relationship between the column in the table and the field in Odoo. Here we are on the level of the field, meaning we can define our procedure if there are, for example, values missing in the ODBC database, but they are probably necessary in Odoo, because otherwise the model in Odoo wouldn't be created. So we can, for example, set we can set like how's it called, a placeholder, or to in that case have the required field in Odoo. And we can also link to parent IDs, meaning if there is one big table and we have 3 different objects or 4 different objects, several different objects in Odoo, we can say, okay, this is linked to a parent. This is done in this stage of the import. You can see here the field mapping, How is it done? You have the column, which is quantity, and the according field in Odoo. And this is how you go through. If you want to exclude a column, you can just untick this box here, and it works. Last thing I want to talk about is the conversion of values. As mentioned before, it's possible to transfer the values into the format how Odoo expect it. For example, if you have like the gender, which is written, for example, male, which is written with a capital M, you can convert it into male written with a small m. Or you can convert it into a number. If it's 1 and 2 for male and female, you can convert it like this. What you also can set here is the primary key or the primary keys you need to have for the record in Odoo. So this is on the tab. I'll show you here. Wait. The identifiers. Here you set the primary keys. And last thing, you can also filter the rows, so not every row of the source database has to be probably imported into Odoo, so you can also filter on the rows. This is how the conversion looks like. Source type, destination type, meaning this would be the source database and this would be the destination, meaning Odoo, and then you set the values. So we already getting to recap as the time is running. What about the importer or the Odoo connector, ODBC connector? I say it's a powerful tool to make your data flows more efficient. First of all, you have to know what you're doing when setting up and configuring. So you need to know, as mentioned before, both sides, Odoo and the source or destination. Once you have set it up, the data is being imported or exported very easily. I just showed the import now, but of course it's pretty similar to export data from Odoo to another system. A small hint from our side. If you have small and rarely occurring imports, we recommend to do it the standard way, as it's not very efficient to do all the work to set up the connector. It's much easier and done faster if you do it with the standard import functionality of Odoo. The import and export run automatically, but you can also trigger them manually as you prefer. Of course, we have an improved user experience by adding the documentation directly in the GUI, and we facilitated the error handling also in the GUI. And the last point of our recap is that we corrected this child disease in the case of changing unique keys in the source database. This is actually the major improvement we made, so it's really working well now. That's it from my side. I say thank you for attention, and if you have questions, please don't hesitate. I try to answer them. Yes, please.
Do you actually have a log of if the connector connected, and how many records is supposed to import, and if anything has failed or not?
Actually, you see the tables you will import. but a log in this case you don't see in the GUI.
So you don't see in the UI?
Yeah, in the UI, no. Yes?
Yeah, does it also detect deleted records in the source database?
Well, the problem with the deleted record is it's deleted, so it's not existing anymore. So we face this problem, and most of the databases do have the possibility to have log action, like Navision does have a possibility like that. So you write in another table an information that in one object a record has been deleted with that unique key. So we can check this table and process record by record and say yes, that record has been removed, so remove it as well. So, and then we do already in the current implementation, but it needs to be configured on the partner database. Otherwise, we will never get it, because imagine you have 100,000 records, you cannot do all the time a comparison what has been deleted or what not. That's not efficient in points of time.
Okay, thank you.
Other question? Back there.
Synchronization so that actually understands if the record is updated on the source.
So I didn't understand the beginning. Sorry, it was a bit louder.
So the table, the data was migrated to the Zoom from the source, and now the source gets changed. Is there any synchronization to so that trigger
Yes.
or
Yeah.
whatever
Yes, it's updated.
So every change on the source database is an update, triggers an update on the Odoo side.
that this is set just in Odoo?
Sorry?
This should be set only in Odoo. You're setting this
Yes.
only in Odoo.
Yeah. We fetch the change in the source database and know that we have to update the record in Odoo.
Don't you have a statistic how many records which were updated only in the background?
Well, we can do that kind of statistics, but we didn't have the need to really do it, because you can do it on database level if you have to. So we mainly check, are the changes to be processed, yes or no. If there are changes to be processed, they are processed, and then it's okay. So it's not that all the time everything is fetched. So we know the last time we updated our site, we know when the record has been modified. If there's a delta in between, we need to update this record. So it's mainly about a timestamp. But we don't do like a pre-flight check to say, okay, we need to update that amount of records currently, because it was never needed. And it's quite performant, so there was really not the need for such implementation.
Just to clarify for me, so the idea is to do the basic import of the very beginning already with the connector, and then I can use that connection I use for the import to synchronize every 30 minutes everything back again to Odoo. Is that right? So I have the initial import and I do the synchronizing with the same connection then. So I do it
Yes.
one time.
Yes, that's the cool thing about it. You have to set it up once, and then it works by its own. If you have set it up that it automatically imports. If you want to trigger the import manually, of course you have to do it by your own, but you have the choice.
Do you have an experience with additional databases, not just
We have
for the source?
We have two databases we tested. One is SQL, and the other one was Firebird. Yeah.
So currently there are multiple MS SQL implementations and one Firebird implementation. So the syntax is slightly different from the kind of driver. So if there is a need for another database, first of all, the syntax needs to be checked, but it could be adapted for sure.
So what about if one record from the source cannot be passed to Odoo because the record is broken or somehow it didn't pass through. Is there any log saying?
It will be written into the as an error message if it doesn't work. That's why for this case you have the error messages to tap.
And if you change, if you change it in Odoo, is it reverted back to the source?
And only if you have set up also the export. But if it's not, there is not a response from the import side to the source system. It's just receiving.
So, for example, and one more question. So, let's say you have an accounting booking in the source system you want to transfer it. And suppose it needs to create not only from one booking, it needs to create a credit note and also a customer invoice. How can we solve, because now it creates two records instead of one?
It's just that's a parent and child in the end. Yeah. This is what I told about parent and child. So it's maybe one record changing in the source system, creating several objects in Odoo. So this would be the case how you have to set it up as a parent and child.
Can you also use other objects and tables in the source database? Let's say if there are queries or views.
Yeah,
sure. Is that possible?
Yeah, definitely. And regarding the synchronization back briefly, it's quite dangerous to do synchronizations on both sides because we from Odoo cannot know what is the business logic in the other system. So never write into other systems. We can do it, but we really don't recommend it. So if there's a need, we have a concept to say we have like an intermediate table or an intermediate object.
Yeah.
So we update this intermediate object and the other partner needs to develop a solution to process the information we are giving. Or we can only say, yeah, there's a change, please check on our side and so on. So for communication, it's really cool. But to really have both sides synchronization, that's dangerous. It will, in the end, generate infinitive loops. So we don't do that. But by design, you could be able to create those kind of stuff, and then you will win nothing.
I have to I'm sorry, we have to stop. Next talk is ready. If you have further questions, you can come.
thought. Welcome to my talk on managing commissions in Odoo. My name is Jared Kipe. I am the president and developer at EBOO. We are a gold partner in the United States, located in Washington State. So if you're not familiar with commissions, commissions are kind of a form of compensation that is basically kind of like revenue sharing in a lot of ways, right? So you, a salesperson, it's almost always sales-based. A salesperson will make a sale. Usually that means an invoice. If there's a salesperson goes to the invoice and they effectively get a portion of the revenue from that invoice. So kind of decisions and configuration that we want to talk about. We have kind of the decision on when you recognize that commission as a liability. So typically that would be on posting an invoice, right? So creating an invoice and then confirming the invoice, posting it in 13, this is in 13 by the way, or on the invoice paid. So basically when an invoice is marked paid or paid through the system, then you would recognize the commission as being allowed right then and there. In effect, you actually, we always create the commission when the invoice is posted. We just confirm or create the journal entry that the commission creates when the kind of event has occurred. What do you pay the commission on? So effectively, invoice total versus invoice margin. One of these is easier to understand in a lot of ways for a lot of organizations, but ultimately invoice margin is usually better because it kind of encourages the salespeople to make deals that are beneficial to the company and not just like really big deals, right? So obviously all of the employees have different commission rates. It's probably baked into yearly reviews and contracts and things like that. And so we have a couple of fields on the employee contract model to look at. How you pay it. So in the US and probably everywhere, the commission is a fully taxable income, basically. So paying it isn't as easy as just cutting a check for like a reimbursement for an expense or something like that. You need to get this to a payroll provider, or in this case, Odoo, 13 with payroll and stuff. We'll take a look at that. And then we have some kind of more advanced use cases. We have a like administrative or assistant-based commission structure as well, or like mechanism. And then we have customer-specific commission structures, which is kind of a more advanced way of, or maybe not advanced, but really specific. So if you've got a really big customer that comes in from a specific sales channel, or maybe even a external party like a recruiting or whatever company or partner, then you may need to have kind of a customer-specific ordered list and commission rates for different employees and things like that. So we'll take a look at those as well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, commissions are kind of both motivational and compensatory. So kind of some reporting and dashboard-like objects or resources for the employee is always a good thing. So that said, let's start by going into the main accounting configuration. All right, so we'll scroll down here to the commission section, and we see a variety of fields, the first of which is the journal. This is the journal that the commissions will take place in. So you have your invoices in one journal. When the invoice is confirmed, a journal entry will be created in this commissions journal. And so I already made one in advance. And if we pop that open, very important that you fill in the default debit and credit accounts. These are basically the accounts that the commissions would be recognized into as an expense, as is indicated by this. If you fail to set up either of these, then when the commission goes to get posted, specifically not created, because we can't create it without creating a journal entry, you'll see an error that the commission journal isn't set up properly. Now we have the liability account, and you'll note that in the description up above it that if you leave this empty, then you're using the employee's private addresses accounts payable. So every employee has a private address or home address. It's usually where they put information related to like their private phone numbers and addresses, and ultimately that's kind of the object that payroll uses to collect up balances that are due to the employee. So you can leave that blank, or you can fill it with a liability account. I have a commission payable account here, but I'll pop that open and we'll see that it's just a current liability. It's not a payable account. Could be theoretically, but then it would be a little harder to get back to the employee. This one in particular kind of goes back to, geez, am I in debug? I guess so. I don't see debug in my menu, but I am in debug. Anyway, the next item up for here is pay commission, which is unfortunate, kind of the label is broken up onto 2 lines. So this we pay based on invoice validation or paid, as I described earlier. I'm going to go ahead and choose paid, but I'll have to kind of come back here for a reason we'll see a little later. And then the commission base, which is on invoice margin or on invoice total, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that on invoice margin. So I'll go ahead and hit save. And get out of debug so I don't have all these hover tips. Guess we have to do this. Leave developer tools. All right. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and go and create a sale order. Well, actually, we should talk about how the employee setup portion of it, specifically the rates that they're going to be receiving commission for. So I'll go to employees. I'll pop open the admin user's employee and their contract specifically. And these are the 2 fields that I was referring to. So the first one's pretty self-explanatory, commission percentage. It's basically whatever the balance of the commission itself is, multiplied by this is the total commission that you're going to be paying. And then we have an admin commission, which we'll get back to in a little bit. So with those kind of out of the way, let's go ahead and go and create a sale. So I will create a sale for a random partner here with the demo data. I created a couple of products in advance, a low cost here, which has a pretty a reasonable amount of margin, I guess. I might have mixed those up there, but let's go ahead and order several of these to get a bigger value here. So this is margin on sale orders, which is stock Odoo, right? And at this point, well, we should point out that as I am logged in as that user, I am implicitly the salesperson, and that particular customer doesn't have a salesperson, otherwise they would have been that one as well. So after creating or validating, I can create an invoice. And creating the invoice, as expected, we'll come over here. We have the same margin, or a very similar margin over here calculation, which is part of our eBoo suite for invoices. So I'll go ahead and confirm it. And upon confirming it, we have created a commission object. So if we click on it, we'll see that it's in a draft state, a new state, and we'll go ahead and click on that to take a look at some of the values. So of course we have the employee and the contract that was discovered for the employee based on the time period and whether it's running. We have a source move, or invoice in this case, and we have a rate type. If we edit this, we'll note that there's a variety of rate types, including manual, so you can in fact just create commission objects completely out of nowhere if you have a particular need to do that. It's come up. And then we have the rate, which is not editable because it's coming from the contract, and we have the rate type of normal. Base total, which is the sum total of the invoice, and then the base amount, which is the margin on the item. So that's why we're paying by margin. And thus, between the 5% and the base amount, we get the amount, and that is effectively what we'd expect to pay for that invoice. So normally we can come over here and register payment on this invoice, and it marks the invoice paid successfully, but our commission is still unfortunately not confirmed. This is being a alpha build of 13. It doesn't quite work right, but we'll get that sorted out eventually, I'm sure. So with that single entry done, let's go ahead and talk about that admin commission rate that I was referring to. So admin commission rates are particularly useful in, well, a variety of scenarios, but one in which either you have an assistant, an administrative assistant for the salesperson. So maybe you have salespeople inputting sales, but you have a set number of people that are doing things with those sale orders, like maybe validating them, or they need to go and do additional steps. Another potential option would be if the employee has like a literal coach or somebody that maybe is their kind of their coach, and maybe they give them some of their contacts or something like that, and they're now their coach, I guess. So that's what this admin percentage rate is right here for Mitchell admin. If we go over to our Mark demo employee over here, we can set up the coach right here, so a stock field. So we'll choose the admin, and we'll hit save. Let's go ahead and take a look at Mark's contract as well. So he's got a commission rate set as well, no administrative rate, but it probably wouldn't matter because he's not the coach for anybody. So with that done, let's go ahead and make a second sale order. We'll do the high cost one here. So the cost is much closer to this one, so the margin is a lot lower. Let's go ahead and order, several of these items as well. And we need to obviously make sure that we give Mark the credit for this, as that was what we're trying to do. So we'll confirm and invoice again. Mark will come over to the invoice. Oh, and before I validate this invoice, actually, let's go ahead and, well, yeah, never mind. I'll do that afterwards. So we'll post this invoice, and in this case, we got 2 commissions. One is for Mark, which uses the normal type and his base rate. And the other one is for the admin user as the coach rate, right? So the administrative rate. All right, so let's go ahead and just confirm these real fast because they're not going to get confirmed when I pay the invoice. And before going any further, let's go ahead and switch our settings around in our commissions area to be on posting of the invoice itself. So we'll come down here, and instead of invoice paid, we'll say on invoice validation, which probably should say posted now. And give that a little save. All right, so the last kind of way to create commissions, other than I suppose manual, would be to, let's actually talk about refunds first. So if you're doing refunds manually, then make sure that you set the salesperson. Otherwise, most people would do refunds through the, no, okay. So let's do a refund through the sale order, which is effectively done by getting the line back to invoiceable. This could have been through a return or an RMA, but in this case, I can just set the quantity on this line. And when we hit save, we will be able to invoice again. And in this case, it's going to generate a customer refund invoice. And that's this one here. And when we post it, we'll get a commission. And importantly, that commission was already confirmed. If we take a look at it, it has basically all the signs reversed just as you would expect from a refund. And so in effect, refunds and handling the commission kind of changes for refunds is just as easy as doing any sort of normal refund or return process that you probably already have. All right, so now on to the last kind of special consideration. If I go into accounting customers, because I don't have contacts installed, let's go ahead and change Azure Interior to have a commission structure. So on the accounting tab, we have an object called a commission structure. We'll create one for an agency. These commission structures can be used and should be used really like around different partners, meaning you should create them for kind of a overarching structure that then you can reuse on different partners and stuff for whatever the negotiated rate is. So we'll create an edit, and we'll add an employee. We'll just choose the top one, Abigail, here as kind of the external agency person. So this might be a 1099 contractor or something. We'll go ahead and put admin on here as well. I'm going to leave this one 0, and that is kind of a key indicator that we actually want to use the contract rate, or whatever it is right now. And then we'll also go ahead and add our Mark user, but we'll set him to a flat 1% on this structure. So with that done, we could create a sale order, but we can also just create an invoice because ultimately everything is driven through invoices anyway. So we'll create an invoice for Azure Interior, and we'll add on some product here. And we'll go ahead and order several of those. And now when we post this invoice, 3 commissions were created. So as expected, we have kind of the external agency commission right here. The rate type is structure, and the rate comes ultimately from the structure itself. So obviously we have structure on all 3 of these, and we have the contract percentage for the admin user, the flat rate percentage for Mark, and ultimately a flat rate for the external agent as well. All right, so with all of those kind of done, let's talk about kind of the next phase, right? So in sales, right, we have the ability for a salesperson to look at the commissions through this top-level object. This is kind of a reporting overview for the salesperson. In fact, they'll only be able to see their commissions. As an admin, I can see all the commissions, and as a payer or whatever, I would be able to see all the commissions. But this can be thought of as kind of a generally a dashboard-like thing for the employee, because they can kind of just filter for their confirmed but not paid ones yet, and kind of see what they're expecting to receive in the future, because it is really supposed to be kind of a John and blank here. Who else didn't sleep last night? No? All right, so that same menu is available in accounting under the accounting menu down here for commissions. So let's go ahead and group by employee, and ultimately we could group by status as well, but I don't have any. So I'll go ahead and select maybe a couple of these, or maybe all of them actually, I guess, and I'll use my action mark paid. And that'll redirect me over to a new object, which is the commission payment. The commission payment object is actually really analogous to the expense sheet, if you're familiar with the expenses app. So you have expenses, and then ultimately those get submitted as like a bundled up expenses, as an expense sheet rather. And that's kind of the same thing that we see here. So these are all of the sources and amounts and stuff for all the commissions, and we have some stats or kind of some summary over here. So at this point, if you're not using payroll in Odoo, then this would probably be the time that you would take this data out of the system and take it into your external payroll provider, or otherwise find a way to actually remit the payment. But here in Odoo, in 13 here, we have our new payroll kind of mechanisms, and I've got a report index payslip button that I will press. Once I press that, the button disappears because it's able to be used in payroll. So I'll go over to payroll, and I'll make a new payslip for the admin user for what I just created the payment for. And you'll note that we are linked immediately to all of the commissions that were in that state of like ready to be paid on the next payslip. And down here in the other inputs, we have an amount for 481, which is the summary of all of those commissions. I can hit commute sheet and come over to the salary information, and we have basic wage for commission down here at the bottom, near the bottom anyway. We can, of course, also click on the commission here and see a list of all of the commissions. And ultimately, all those commissions now have a commission payment. And ultimately, that commission payment has a salary slip. So you have front to back reporting for all of your needs and deep diving into the various aspects of your commissions. And that about wraps it up for my talk. So do we have any questions? Yes.
What about more complex, let's say, structures, like if one employee has, let's say, 5%, and if he hits the quota, then he gets higher percentage?
Sure. So the question is basically, can it be extended with more advanced stuff? Of course it can, right? So this is pretty generic functionality for the most part. So building something like that would simply just be a customization on top of the structure object, which really doesn't have much logic at all. It's more just about grouping them right now. So you could certainly add things like that to it over time, for sure. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is this a standard module, or is
no, this is a new module that we just wrote. So this is part of Odoo Suite Enterprise, which is our specifically package of source code that we use that links against Enterprise itself. So in this case, payroll and things like that. And so it's not, this particular one is not open source. The invoice margin is actually, that's in Odoo Suite, but this module is a new module, and it is, it's not released yet, right? Like, it's still beta, if you will. Yes?
Is there any way to handle product incentives?
So the question is there any way to handle product incentives? Specifically meaning that if they sell more of a specific category or item, yes. Not really, though, again, it's pretty, there's a lot of like hook-like functions and stuff in it that could be used to support mechanisms like that, right? Because ultimately the calculation for what that base amount of the invoice is pretty flexible. So you could obviously implement your own that iterates over all of the invoice lines product and applies different rules or logic to it, for sure. Yeah. Yes?
Can you use it to handle commissions on consignments?
So the question, can you handle commissions on consignments? By consignment, do you mean that you sell something and then they pay it off over time? Or, yeah.
We have a bunch of couple of clinics. We receive some drugs from a pharmaceutical company. We don't pay it. Okay, so we collect our money based on the commission, and so we remit the balance to the company.
So you're saying that you don't pay the
assignment, right? We don't pay, all right? So we collect commission on the sales, and then we remit the balance of the money to the pharmaceutical company.
Do you create invoices?
Yeah, you create invoices for the sales we make.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So at the end of every month, we reconcile, then we collect commission, and then pay the pharmaceutical company the balance.
So kind of the opposite of this, right? So you're not paying the employee as much as you're paying where you took the goods from. That's interesting. I suppose you could. The commission structure theoretically could be used to do that because you could have that external agency, but really that sounds more like it's product driven, so it's kind of like a mix mash of the two last questions. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure that it could theoretically with some modifications and stuff, but we'd have to understand the domain logic there better to give a good answer for sure. Yes?
What if there was a part payment and would...
That's a good question. So in Odoo, in prior versions of Odoo, so are you asking if they only pay partial of the invoice? How would you pay partial of the commission? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So that's actually a good question. So in prior versions of Odoo, there was no like intermediate paying step. So there wasn't. There was either an invoice was paid or it wasn't paid, basically. And so the invoice paid action is what we hook on to validate the commission effectively. So in prior versions of Odoo, no. Like basically, if it's an all or nothing kind of a thing, if you were set up in such a way that it was based on invoice paid, then no, it would require the whole invoice to be paid or to be marked paid, right? So if you wrote off some of the rest of the invoice, it would do that as well. But in Odoo 13, that action is triggered even when a partial payment is made, which means that ultimately that's going to get trickier depending on how much we want to follow like an all or nothing thing. In your case, I take it that you're wanting to be able to pay partial commission. Is that true? Okay. Again, could be modified, right? So the calculation and theoretically when the commission object is created could be tweaked, right? So you'd probably defer creation of the invoice or of the commission objects until you receive at least some payment, and then you would, instead of creating the commission base on the either the margin or the total, you'd base it off of the payment amount. So it's theoretically possible, but not possible right now. Thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you.
How much is
commencer. Ok. On attend. Okay, let's start. So hello, good morning everyone. My name is Antoine Merveille. I'm a business analyst here at Odoo. It's been 1 year that I'm working in this great company now. So I'm going to present you the Odoo mobile version. So after this small introduction, I will try to convince you to download this amazing app. Then we will see some of the new features that have been developed for the new release. And at the end, we will have a small Q&A session if we have time. So our vision is that any kind of user, whether they are managers, workers on the field, employees, whatever the type of user, anybody should be able to be fully productive only by using a smartphone. So nowadays, with the technology that we have, of course, we can have instant access to any information. So with the Odoo mobile application, you will have that, of course, any information related to your business. But in addition to that, you will be able to be fully productive, to actively work on all your tasks and your projects. So the interface has been designed to be really responsive and to provide to the users a really optimal reading and navigation experience. So all the functionalities that you have on the desktop version are available on the mobile version. So why should you download the Odoo mobile application? First of all, the application, as I said, is a hybrid version between the native part of Odoo and the mobile version of Odoo. So of course everything has been redesigned in order to the interface to adapt itself to the type of device you are using. And even if you have, for example, some customization that you can do with Odoo Studio, if, for example, you add some new fields, additional fields on the contact form, or if, for example, you change the view of the list view of all your products, those customizations also are included and are displayed in the mobile version. Since we all have our mobile phones every time with us, if you are going to a lot of business events, if you are a lot in transportations, you always have a smartphone, but you don't always have a laptop. So push notifications are really useful. I think I don't need to explain why, but the thing is that, for example, here on the GIF, you can see that someone can interact with you instantly by notifying you, or by just writing a message in the message module. So we have a module for messages, such as WhatsApp or Facebook. We have integrated the same thing in Odoo, so you can interact instantly and receive the support of any colleague if you need an information or whatever. And we also have push notifications. So when you receive a notification on a certain object, for example, here on an opportunity, you can click on this notification and be redirected instantly on the correct object. This works on in any model in Odoo, so any model where you have a chatter. For example, an opportunity, a sale order, an invoice, a quotation, whatever model. So you will save a lot of time. Odoo Mobile, yes, of course, is available for Android and it's available on the Apple Store. So we did Odoo Mobile to be able to, so that it's useful for any kind of user. So here in this audience, please raise your hands if in the last few months you had to create an expense to be reimbursed by your company. Who had to do this the last few months? I guess that also in the last few months you had to plan a meeting or a call with a supplier or a customer. Raise your hands. A lot. So this is just to show you that the mobile application can be used by anyone. So if you are, for example, a sales representative, you go to business events, you will collect some business cards. Of course, with Odoo now, you have the possibility to take a picture, for example, of the business card, enter the information of a contact, and instantly you will also be able to, on the fly, create a quotation. So you will never tell your potential customer or your opportunities, sorry, I don't have the information, I need to go back to my office, or it's on my laptop. If you are, for example, a consultant, or you are providing any type of service, you can also, for example, record your time you do on a task with a timesheet application. So you record the time and you allocate it to a certain task or a certain project. If you are a manager, you have access to statistics, reports. You can see all the sales that your team have done in the last few months. If you, even for employees, you can order lunch. You can ask for leave. You can what else? You can do basically everything. So the new features in the version 13, in general, we have improved a lot the usability of the application. On the left side, you see here in purple the list of the menu in Odoo. So here I enter a product form, and I have instant access to all the information related to that product, such as the image, the price, the cost, anything. You can see also that all the applications appears. It's really similar to the desktop version, so users won't be confused. On the right GIF, you can see that we have also added the possibility now to swipe to the left or to the right. Here to the left in order to mark a message as read, or you can also do that to the right in order to star a message and to be able to come back later on this message. We have changed the default view. So now, if for example you create a sale order and you want to apply a customer to this sale order, you will have automatically the Kanban view instead of the list view that we had before. This is just better for the readability of the screen. This counts also for products, for example, that you want to add on a product on a sale order line. So on any many-to-one fields. We have also included the left search panel. So here in this example, it is in the lunch application. So in order to order a lunch, I can now filter on categories. For example, here I just order lunch and I want to see the burgers and pizzas. So it's really easy to use. We have this functionality in employees and documents application. Yeah, what we also developed in the POS, if you are using a point of sales, for example, in a restaurant or in a shop, you have now the possibility to connect multiple employees on one device. So you will save a lot of money if it's necessary, because now you can just purchase one device, one tablet, for example, and connect multiple employees. So you just have to log in with a PIN code or by scanning your badge, for example, and any employee can now connect and sell. And so it's easier for the reporting later, because you will be able to see what sales have been made by which employee, what employee. A really nice feature we have developed also is the possibility now to directly share a picture from your mobile gallery. So it's really easy. It's like with Facebook or Instagram, WhatsApp. When you on your smartphone, when you click on the share button, the Odoo icon will appear, and you will be able to click on it, and you will be redirected, of course, in the application. And then you select the module where you want to go. For example, the project application in Odoo, or the the CRM, and then you select the record where you want to upload the PDF file or the picture. In general, the documents application has been reviewed, so now it's fully integrated with the mobile app. For those who don't know, the documents application is really useful if you want to centralize and better organize all your documents within Odoo by folders, etc. of course. So you can also, with this document application, for example, ask or request for a signature by another employee. You can ask for a review to your boss on a specific document. You can select several documents and download them. So really useful. We have also added different types of view in the document app, and not only the Canva view as before. Interesting one, the barcode now is available in the mobile version. So simply it will open the camera of your phone when you want to scan a product, a lot number, or a package, or a serial number. You can even scan the type of operation that you want to do, such as a delivery or a reception. And with this, we have also added a shortcut, barcode shortcut, on in some parts of Odoo. So on sale order lines, when you create a sale order, instead of searching for the product by typing the word of your product, you just click on this icon, it opens the camera of your phone, you scan the product, and then you can continue your sale order and share the quotation or a sale order. We have added this also on accounting lines, so for invoices, on expense products, and on purchase order lines. Here I did a small example in a GIF, just to show you how quick it is. I don't have even time to see the barcode that the application recognizes what product I am scanning. For those who want to know, there is no beep, but there is a small vibration when you scan a product. And in general, yeah, we have improved the user experience. So now you can receive notifications, of course, as before, but you have the possibility to select what notification you want to receive. So you can not filter, but you can receive some direct messages, notifications, but you can block notifications for channel messages, for example. Same thing for notifications when you are following a document, and notification at mention. We have also integrated the possibility to add a follower to a document. It was not the case before. This is a feedback we received a lot from the community and from the users. So now it's fully integrated in the mobile version. And on the right side, you see an example also, of the small feature we have added. When you scroll up in a Kanban view, you see that the control panel appears directly, just better for the usability. There are many more small improvements that we have made. So in general, I think the developers did a really great job, and the product owner, of course, as well. I think I forgot maybe one small improvement we did. Yeah, in general, we have a better management of multi-accounts, and I think that's it. So, in conclusion, thanks for the developers and the product owner. I think if you use Odoo Mobile, you will save a lot of time. I use it for my projects when I'm traveling or when I'm just on the way. So now we have a bit of time for question and answer. I know that you are all hungry, so don't hesitate. Yeah.
So this app works with a custom module as well?
With custom Odoo. You mean if you do some customization with Odoo Studio? Yeah. Yeah, so you can create any customization with Odoo Studio, such as automated actions, not only changing views, but also add any kind of customizations, and it stays the same, because it's made in order for the interface to adapt itself to the size of the device you are using, or tablet or smartphone. Yeah?
Is it offline capable?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Is it offline capable? Is there any plan?
Offline? No. No, you have to be online, if it's the question. Yeah. No, you have to be online to use Odoo Mobile. Other question?
Is there any plans to introduce offline capability? Just the way we have it for the POS, maybe for other countries?
I don't think so. No?
Not for the moment.
Yeah, not for the moment. No.
Is it only for Odoo Online, or we can use it for our own Odoo server?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Sorry.
Is this only available for Odoo Online?
You mean for the enterprise version?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only for the enterprise version, if I'm not mistaken.
Cloud hosted for our own Odoo? It works too.
Yeah, it works too. Other questions? Yeah?
Is anything held locally on the app, on the phone? So let's say you're an employee and then you leave the company. Is there anything that actually resides on the phone?
Sorry, I don't get.
Anything that resides on the phone after?
Okay. You mean
in the app?
So if you leave the company, you want to make sure that no information stays on the phone.
Correct.
So if you leave a company, it's like on the desktop version. The administrator of the database will just remove the user. So on a laptop or on the mobile version, the employee won't have access to Odoo, won't have access to the database of the company. But if you download some documents, when you still have access to those information, yeah, of course, it stays on the mobile, on the smartphone.
So it doesn't run in a container, therefore, should it?
In a container?
Yeah.
No, you need to log in. So if you
yeah.
log in, you can't access it. So.
Okay.
So yeah, indeed, you have to, for the one who didn't hear, you have to log in with your password exactly the same way as on the laptop. So if you don't have any login, if you have a wrong password, or if you don't have any user, you cannot connect to the database.
Okay, but any downloads that you make then are actually on your phone?
Yeah.
They're not retained within the
Yeah, if you download informations, like on a laptop, the informations are in your laptop.
Yeah, but obviously if you built the download capability within the container, within the app itself, then actually if you're authenticating through the app, if you leave the company, then potentially you've lost access to those downloads.
Mm-hmm.
Then any thoughts to do that?
It's not in the pipe. It's not in the pipe, I think.
Yeah, it's a good idea, but it's not. Okay, how you mean?
But you can in the desktop you can block the exports of data. So is it the case in the mobile phone if you block exports?
We don't have exports.
Yeah. Okay. So you cannot, in the list view, you cannot select and export data like on the desktop version. So in the mobile phone, no. Any other question?
It's especially for a field service application that you've developed. One of the things that could be interesting and that are asked from a lot of customers is to keep a picture during the finished intervention, then they keep a picture. I saw that with your barcode scanner application, you can reach the camera of your mobiles.
Mm-hmm.
Then it will be possible to develop a part, especially to keep the picture somewhere in the application.
If you're like on a task in your mobile, you can just go in the chatter, go in the attachment section, say that you want to add an attachment, and then your phone will automatically ask if you want to take a picture or go to the gallery. It's already in your phone.
With the task, we can add this
yeah, you just go on the
attachment,
chatter,
and then with the mobile we keep
exactly.
the picture.
And it will ask for the permission to go to your gallery or to take a picture instantly.
Yeah, so for the video, the mobile application is integrated with the smartphone. So for example, if you click on a time field, you have to enter a date or a time, it will open the widget of your smartphone. So if you go on in the chatter, what we call the chatter of a document, so for example an opportunity, a task, a sale order, any object in Odoo that contains a chatter, you can upload a document, you can write down a message, and yeah, it opens the gallery of your smartphone. Yes?
You said that the barcode scanner works with the sales module. Does it also work with the rentals module?
Rental? Not for the moment. Not for the moment. It's a good question actually, because rental, you create sale orders. So we have to test. I never use it since rental is a new application, but we have to test. I don't know.
Is it available for all the versions of Enterprise? Version 10, for example, or 11?
Yes, it's available for every version of Enterprise.
From 10 on to, okay.
Starting from version 10, yeah.
Will you remove the support from 9? No.
Yeah? Yes?
Odoo is using open authentication with Google. Is that linked with the
open
authentication with Google?
Yeah, 2FA?
Yeah.
We don't have that.
You can't choose the authentication with Google. It's only you can only authenticate yourself with your Odoo user. We don't have the Google portal.
Yeah, there is no, even on the desktop version, there is no 2FA. We have on the in standard.
Tu peux te connecter avec un autre provider. Ouais.
Ah yes, yes, of course.
Mais en mobile, c'est obligé de passer.
Yeah, with mobile, no. Yes?
Can we manage multiple companies?
Multiple companies, yes. Multi-accounts. So you can have, there are two things. You can have one database, and in the database use the multi-company feature, so manage different companies in one database. So you just have to log in once, and then select the company where you want to work. Or you can have multiple databases for different companies, and also connect on one of them via the application. Yes?
I just wonder, how do you cache the assets? Like if you have like multiple internet connections, because like so you scrolling through products and users and they all have pictures for several megabytes. Do we have the caching for your connected database, some of the data, or does it always, if you open like a list view or a common view of the products, all products again?
Can you answer?
The perfect box is in cache. Okay. But all data is not in cache. So you have all the time to check if something changed or not. So all the time to fetch the data. Okay.
Yes? Are there any last question? No? Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your meal.